So welcome to my class. Today we will be discussing about a very important topic, literary criticism and literary theory. Trust me, any student of BA English Literature or MA English Literature or Hindi Literature for it matters are often confused about the subject literary criticism and literary theory. You know what? It's very easy, simple. Only if you understand how to approach it. So today's class will be completely focusing on certain objectives that I have made for their class. First and foremost objective is to understand what is literature. Whenever I put this question to a English literature student or a scholar, he fables. He is confused. He is not able to understand what to answer. He either talks about some novel or a poem or a drama. He starts talking about genre, not about literature. He moves on specifically to a particular thing rather than talking in totality what literature is. To understand what literature is, we have to move on to the historical background of either English literature or Hindi literature, or in other words, Indian classics and European classics. Let me talk first about European classics. Plato, one of the greatest philosophers, has written in the Republic. I'm talking about Greece, ancient times, that he wanted to create an ideal state. I'm talking about from a political agenda point of view. Ideal state means what? It is a kind of flawless society. And that's the reason why Plato never wanted any poets, any dramatic personality to be there in the state, because he had an assumption that poetry or drama pollutes human brain. When I say pollute human brain, what I mean to say is it drags human from reality to the illusion, from fact to fiction. And as per Plato, one must always be in reality, because it is the reality which an individual is supposed to tackle. And he had his own notion in the Republic. He has talked about how literature deviates from reality at 3 to 4 stages and pollutes the human brain. But at the same time, another his own disciple, Aristotle, who was his student, had a different point of view. He said, how can literature pollute human brain? And then he said, as per his own statement, he started defining what is tragedy, what is epic, and he gave different formulas, 6 elements, like every tragedy must have a plot, every tragedy must have characters, every tragedy must have thoughts, every tragedy must have melody, diction, spectacles. And as per Aristotle, no literature or in specific tragedy can be devised or created without plot. Now coming on to the topic, literature. What is literature? For whom it is meant? As per Aristotle, he says that everybody is not sensible and sensitive enough to understand the reality as such. So, literature as a subject is not meant for all who are more rational, whose perception, observation skills are good, but are meant for 90% of the people who are biased, whose sense organs are not active, their observation skills are not good. And, and he used a term called catharsis, purgation. Catharsis, definition of catharsis is purgation of pity and fear. So, as per Aristotle's claim, literature is a subject that once performed in front of an audience, I'm talking about 4th BC. It's not today. At that point of time, literacy was not so much. Everybody was not knowing how to read and write. And at that point of time, because performance were there, the different dramas and poetry were performed, and there was audience. There were festivals and occasions where people used to gather and watch these performances. And as on the observation made by Aristotle, he said that it changes the behavior. It grows and develops the sensitivity, sensibility, or observation skills in an individual. Because the individual or the spectator or the audience who is observing a hero, as every literature has a hero, has some theme, right? So, in that hero, on some kind of psychological standpoints, which he feels to be the truth, follows in his course of lifespan and meets certain consequences, conflicts, and ultimately tragedy, faces havoc in his life. And these all performance and his journey in the life gives a lesson to the audience that such kind of mindset I must not have. They visualize things and learn. So Aristotle says literature is a medium of education. Aristotle says literature is a medium of entertainment. So what is literature? A literature is a performative art to educate and entertain people. So it has two agendas. So I guess by now we understand what literature is. Literature is a subject with a motto of educating and entertaining. Let us come on to the next objective. To understand criticism. Lots of scholars, philosophers, the only two specific people at that point of time were philosophers and literary people who used to write dramas, poetries, verses. These philosophers were always critical. They gazed those literature and pinpointed their lacunas, flaws. So what is criticism? Criticism is a critical gaze on an existing literature for removing those flaws. Right? So you cannot distinguish when criticism as a phenomena was adopted in the history of literature. Whether it is Indian, I will talk in the next lecture about Indian classics. It is European classics, right? And then there were parallel different people like Aristotle. The theorization of English literature or European classics started from Aristotle. How? Because it was he who told that every literature must have plot. It was he who told every literature must have characters and how plots are developed, how characters should be to make it universal, what kind of thought process should be, the diction, the language which is to be used, and what kind of language it is to be used, the uses of melody, rhymes, the uses of say other parts like spectacles. He was not more bothered about spectacles. Later on, things were added on. So by now we are clear. By now we are clear that literature is a subject with two agenda: to educate and entertain. Every literature grows. Every field grows to develop, to make it more refined, to make it more specific. Criticism is initial, essential part for it. It is a criticism which helps us to grow, to develop. And in doing criticism, different theories are devised. Right? So, the agenda of the class was to understand what literature is and what is literary criticism and literary theory, and how they all work together for two agenda. And what are those agenda? To educate and to entertain. So for further more insights, for further more clarity, join me in the next class. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.